Hey everybody, I'm here today to talk to you about 11 tips to pass your driving test the first time in 2018. In this video, I'll be going over 11 simple pieces of advice that will give you a better chance at passing the driving test on your first try. With that being said, let's get right into the video. Tip number one is to study like it's a school exam. One of the things that you need to do before you take the driving test is to get as much knowledge as you can, as much driving related knowledge as you can. And that's why I'm telling you to study as if it's a school exam. Many people seem to think that the driving test is simply an easy test, but it's way more than that. It has the same difficulty, in my opinion, as a finals exam in school. And with that being said, you should treat it in the same way and study for it. Tip number two, practice as much as possible. In addition to studying, which was tip number one, you should be practicing as much as you possibly can. The more practice, the better, okay? The more that you practice, the better prepared that you will be for the driving test and the higher likelihood that you'll actually pass the driving test on your first try. So practice as much as you can, and this gets especially important as you get closer to the driving test. Tip number three is to be very nice to the examiner. The driving examiner, the person that is conducting the driving test, is going to be a human being, and that's why you should be nice to them. It's as simple as that. You should be just as nice to them as you would be to anyone else, and I would recommend being even nicer to them, okay? Be extra nice to the driving examiner because they are a human being and they do have feelings. So just be nice to them, have a nice pleasant conversation with them, and just be a pleasant person towards them. Moving forward, tip number four, make note of your weakest skills and work on them. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you know what your weakest skills are and then work on them. And I'll tell you why. When you're taking the driving test, you're more likely to fail based on your weakest skills than you are based on your best or your strongest skills. So with that being said, if you know what your weakest skills are, you can work on them and then you can improve on them, and that will make it more likely to pass your driving test on your first try. So let's say that parallel parking and reverse parking are your weakest skills. You want to continue to work on them and improve on them until you get better at them. Tip number five, always put safety first. Safety is the absolute biggest concern, and you know what, it has the highest importance with regards to driving. So make sure that you put safety first on your driving test, and make sure that you put safety first when you get your license, when you pass that test, when you get your license as you're driving. Safety is the most important thing, and the driving examiner is going to be looking for those safety cues that you are demonstrating. Tip number six, don't assume things about other drivers. Now, when another driver has their signal on, you know, you can think that they're most likely going to turn in the direction of their signal, but that doesn't mean that they are going to do that. It is right to think that they're most likely going to do what they're looking like they're going to do, but don't automatically assume things about other drivers, because that puts you at an increased risk of being in an unsafe driving situation or getting into an accident or a near accident. So don't just assume that a driver is going to do something. You can think that they're most likely going to do something, but don't assume that they're going to do something, okay? Even if it looks like they're going to do it, don't just assume that they're going to do it. Tip number seven is to create mental checklists. So it's important to create these little checklists in your mind about things that you're going to be doing on the driving test. For instance, when you're changing lanes, there's a certain process and procedure that is in place, and you have to follow it in order to change lanes safely and smoothly. And with that being said, you know, there are many things that you have to remember, so I would recommend creating a mental checklist of all of those things that you have to remember. This way, when you're changing lanes, in your mind, you can go through that checklist and you'll know exactly that you've sort of done everything that you're supposed to do. Tip number eight, know exactly how your car responds. Now, every car responds differently, and that's why it's important to know exactly how your car is going to respond when you do something to it. For instance, if you're pressing the accelerator pedal down a certain amount in your car, it's going to respond differently than when you press the accelerator pedal down the same amount in another car. So you want to make sure that you know how your car responds so you can do the appropriate things on the driving test and make sure that you're driving safely and smoothly. Tip number 9, take a driving lesson a few days before the test. When you take a driving lesson, the driving instructor is going to tell you what you're doing well and what you can improve on. And by taking that driving lesson a few days before the driving test, you're going to have some time to improve on those things that the driving instructor told you to improve on. So take a driving lesson a few days before the test. This way you know what you need to work on and you have enough time to work on it. Tip number 10, sleep well before the test. Make sure that you get a good night's sleep the night before the test and also several nights before the test. Your sleep plays a huge role in how your mind and your brain function and how your body responds when your brain tells your body to do certain things. So with that being said, you want to make sure that your reaction time is at its best and you want to make sure that your brain's efficiency is at its best when you're taking the driving test. So make sure that you sleep well several nights before the driving test as well as the night before the driving test. And last but not least, tip number 11 is to calm your nerves. Make sure that you take the appropriate steps to calm down before you take the driving test. It's normal to feel nervous, to feel anxious, to feel eager to take the test, but just do what you can to actually calm your nerves. And that's basically it. In this video, I've gone over 11 tips to pass the driving test on your first try, and these tips are great if you're taking your driving test in 2018 and you want to pass it on your first try. These tips will help you be more likely to pass it on your first try. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think down below as a comment, and of course be sure to subscribe for more great car and driving videos just like this one. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.